You ever notice how life doesn't ask for permission until it hits you, slaps you in the face? Here's a truth most people will never hear. Resiliency is not something you're born with. It's something that is built. Now, built could be through training, or it could be through the hard lessons we learn in life. Now, I'm Spanky Gibson. If you Spanky Gibson 7-1. So what is resiliency? I think resiliency is when someone is tested to the point where they're not broken. They might be bent, but they're not broken. I think we all have resiliency. I think it's just how we pull it out, how we can recognize that we have the intestinal fortitude within us to be able to overcome any adversary or any situation that might push us to those limits. So what are those limits? When's the moment that everything breaks? Now, everyone's different. We all have different situations in our lives that could cause us to break. Now, today is pretty easy. You think about if you turn on the news or you look at anything, everything's doom and gloom. The economy is going to crash. The stock market's down. We're going to war with Iran. We're putting ourselves in these positions where everything that we view gives us a pessimistic thought on everything. We go to the gas tank, we fill up, it's $5 a gallon. Unless you're in California, it might be $8 or $9 a gallon. You just automatically assume that everything is against you. So what is the moment where everything breaks for you? It could be loss of a job when we're in a tight economy. It could be attempting to, buy a home and being turned down. It could be you're living in your home and you can't pay your mortgage and you're on the verge of having that home taken away from you. It could be the loss of a relationship, whether it's a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or a divorce. It could be the loss of a family member. It could be a death of a parent, a death of a child. I mean, for some people, especially little kids, it could be a death of a pet. But how do you come after when that breaks? How do you rebound? How do you overcome those situations? How do you own it when something affects you so greatly? And I don't think it's always medication. I don't think it's always, drugs or alcohol or, self-sedation. I think it's a terrible way to overcome it. I think you have to look at it. You have to realize that it's normal. It's natural for all of us to go through these times that things are difficult. You could ask a grandparent, or if you're lucky enough to have a great-grandparent, or your friends or your parents, anyone, and they can tell you about times that, that have been tough, that they've went through and they've had to overcome it and, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and just carry on. The loss of a job, finding that new job. So that leads me into 3 key pillars of resiliency and what you need to look for in yourself. When you look in the mirror and you're all alone and you're judging yourself and you're telling yourself things that aren't necessarily true, but you believe them because you're so caught up in the world is against you. Now, first, acceptance. No matter what those situations are that I described before, you have to accept you're in the situation. Now, for me, it was the day I lost my leg. Now, the first couple of days I was so sedated, I don't really remember it. But I remember laying in a hospital bed as a brand new above-the-knee amputee. And I naturally, I was almost 35 years old, so it was a little easier for me. But I had to naturally accept the fact I can't have my leg back. And for you, it could be anything. It could be all those losses that I discussed. It doesn't have to be so traumatic like in my case or many other people's cases. But you have to accept where you're at. You have to look and say, here I am. this is my new norm, and start moving forward. Which means you have to adapt. You have to adapt to the situation you're in. For me, adapt with a prosthetic. For you and myself, accepting the loss of a family member. But you have to adapt. You can't say, woe is me. You can't just lean back and go into some spiral of depression and say, the world's against me. You have to adapt. You have to recognize this is my new norm, whatever that norm is. And when you get to that point, and you can accept and you can adapt to here's where I'm at, you have to take action. Me, putting on that leg and beginning walking, as painful and as difficult as it was, I had to move forward. You know, those losses that I talked about, relationship, family members, job. Well, you can't just sit back and say, woe is me, and not go back to work, can you? You got responsibilities. You lose your home, or you're filling up your gas tank and all you have is $10 and all you can get's a little over a gallon, maybe 2 tops. You have to accept that. You have to adapt to that. And then you have to move forward. Maybe in a job situation, you go out and mow lawns during the summer. You do odd jobs. You pick up a second job so that you don't lose on your responsibilities. If you really think about it, your home and your vehicle are 2 of the biggest responsibilities that we have financially. And that loops in with if we have families. We got to be able to keep a shelter above their head. We've got to be able to feed them, and we typically are going to have to drive to work. So taking action is critical. Once you've accepted, once you've adapted, you have to go forward. You have to do what it takes to overcome the situation that you're in. Now, what does that bring along? That brings along pain. It brings emotional pain, and it brings physical pain. The loss of something is going to affect you in those 2 critical ways. Emotionally, which I think is almost more detrimental than physical pain. Now, the physical pain, the emotional pain, it's not your enemy. It's your instructor. We have this saying in the Marine Corps, pain is weakness leaving the body. And I truly believe that. I lived it. I had to use my own resilient mindset to overcome more things than I can remember, especially my amputation. The loss of my parents, the loss of some of my friends, inside and outside of combat. But that pain made me stronger. That pain of putting a leg on for the first couple times when it hurt so badly, and taking those first couple steps, it didn't feel good, but it was exciting. That pain was my instructor. Now, many of us that have been in a lot of pain, we know the level of a pain we can accept. We don't have to go to that 0-10 thing they always ask you at the doctor's office. We can accept where our limitation is. And we can keep forward momentum based on that. Now, that emotional pain, which I think is much harder to overcome, is being able to get past the depression or the anxiety of a situation and moving forward. And it has to be quick. We have to do it very quickly, because if we sit back and we don't accept everything and we don't adapt to it and we don't take the action, we're going to spiral downhill. And the longer that we do that, the longer you do that, the harder it will be to start moving forward. Never quit. It's not worth it. Somebody loves you. Somebody counts on you. And you're responsible for not only yourself, but other people. Most people don't think about that when they're in depression, anxiety, or they feel the world's against them. They don't think about their friends. They don't think about their families. They don't think about so many other things. And I'm not saying use that outside acceptance as a reason. You have to do it. You have to accept where you're at, and you have to accept to move forward. You have to accept to never quit. And if you can accept that, and you can get that forward momentum, your comeback story will begin. You're going to have fear. You can't be fearless. You're going to hurt. And I know it sucks. But you can't quit. If you move forward, if you accept, if you adapt, you will accomplish whatever you set your mind to. And if you don't accomplish it the first time, go the next time. And the next time. Until you accomplish it. And then you make another goal. And you start moving forward with those goals. And every day will be a new goal. Every hurdle will be crossed. Now, if you like this information, I would ask you to comment, like it. Share your stories with all of us on how you have used resilient factors and a mindset in your life to overcome adversity. I would really like to hear it. I barely shared on mine, but I'll have a bunch of pictures added in here that can kind of give you a visual representation without me talking more about myself, because this is about you. This is about your mindset. Because I truly believe that. If you reach in, you dig deep in yourself, you can overcome anything. We all can. And it's critically important we accept that fact. Just remember, and if you do that, you can accomplish anything in your life. I don't care how hard it is, how doom and gloom it might sound. Now you can look up one of these corners to watch other videos of mine. I would ask you to. I'm growing. I'm 6 weeks in. I'm trying to get better at making these videos, better at editing. This will be the second video that I actually edit. And I just want to thank you for being here. And if you would, if you don't take anything else out of this, never quit.